This video will guide you through the process of changing your router's LAN IP address and configuring a DHCP address pool using the Tomato firmware. In this video, you'll learn how and why to change the router's LAN IP address, how to configure the DHCP address pool, and finally, how to set the lease time for client devices. But before we dive into the how-to of this video, let's first cover some basics so that you'll have a better understanding of what we're actually doing and why we're doing it. So, why would you want to change the router's IP address? The first reason could be that you are running more than one router or that you need to separate subnets. For example, maybe you wish to completely separate your children's computers from your business computers. Or maybe you have a small business and you want to separate your accounting department from your shipping department. This way, devices on one network are unable to browse devices on the other network. The second reason you may want to change the router's IP address is to add an additional layer of security. For example, most routers use the standard IP address 192.168.1.1 or 0.1. These are well-known IPs and they pose a potential vulnerability. Therefore, by changing the static IP of the router itself, you can decrease the chances of having your network compromised. To change the router's IP address, log into your router and navigate to Basic Network. On this page, notice that there are two sections, WAN Internet and LAN or Local Area Network. Do not confuse WAN DHCP with LAN DHCP. WAN DHCP is how your router connects to the Internet. In this mode, which is the most common, your router receives a dynamic public IP address from your Internet service provider. Since we're dealing with private IP addresses within our LAN, this is the area that we will be focusing on. To change your router's IP, click the IP address. For residential home networks and small businesses, you can simply change the third octet to something below 254. For example, 192.168.50.1. If it has not already been selected by default, tick the checkbox to enable the DHCP server. Now let's configure a range for the DHCP address pool. The first column represents the lowest number IP address that can be issued. Likewise, the second column represents the highest number. Together, these two numbers create a pool of IP addresses in which the router will use to assign dynamic IPs to client devices. Typically, a range of 50 addresses should be enough, say from 100 to 150. The lease time refers to the amount of time in minutes that the device will lease the IP address. For example, if you set this to 1440, the router will assign IPs for a period of 24 hours. Once you've made your changes, click OK. Scroll down and click Save. At this point, the router will reset and change its IP address. As a result, you may no longer be able to reach the router. Your internet browser will go blank and the router will appear unresponsive. This is because the computer is still operating on an IP address from the old subnet, which is a completely different subnetwork from that of the router's new IP configuration. At this point, the best way to reach your router is to change or renew your computer's IP address. There are different ways to renew your IP address, but the simplest way is to just reboot your computer. However, my preferred method is to assign a static IP address. Doing this will insulate your static IPs from your dynamic IPs and help to prevent IP addressing conflicts. There are two ways to assign a static IP address to your computer. 1. Directly on your computer, and 2. From within the router itself. But since we're unable to reach our router at the moment, I recommend doing this on your computer for now. In the next video, I'll cover both of these methods. Once you've assigned a static IP address to your computer, you should be able to log back into the router. Just be absolutely sure that when you change the computer's IP address, that you are using the exact same subnet as your router. So, if you gave your router an IP address of 192.168.50.1, be sure that you assign your computer an IP of, say, 192.168.50.5 or 155, Just remember that it's always best to use a number either above or below your DHCP range.